Hi, everyone. Hoping that you all are well on this Friday evening. And thank you for joining us on this continuing journey on the road to clarity with respect to a number of issues. Now, what we're going to be focusing on today is a continuation of a number of narratives, and we are starting to narrow things down so that we can get clarity related to a number of issues. And so our focus today is on Jacob and Rome. And so just to give you a little overview of our journey for this evening, we're going to be looking at a little bit of scripture. We're going to be looking at some depictions. We're going to look at the essence of what it means to be Roman. And so we're going to be looking at this dynamic of this Shem byword yet again. And then we're going to consider the implications of the conflict between Jacob and Rome, and it's a long-standing conflict. And then there's going to be a reading suggestion for you. We're going to start off with scripture so that people can get a grasp on this complex relationship between Jacob and the Romans. And it's indicated as Romans because we're not talking about Rome specifically. We're talking about the people group known as the Romans. And the people group is quite obscure, and so they go by many names and many anagrams. And so what we have here is a scripture coming out of Ezra 9:1-2. And it indicates that the people of Israel and the priests and the Levites have not separated themselves from the people of the land, doing according to their abominations, even the Canaanites, meaning that the people identified as the Israelites were integrated with all of these people, the Hittites, the Egyptians, the Moabites. They were integrated with all of these people and were following their practices in terms of their spiritual practices. And so there was concern, and this concern was offered. And there is an ending group, and it's the Amorites or the Amori or the Amori. And so that is the group specifically that is definitively tied to the name Roman. Now, what's odd about this is that the Amorites have dual identities. And so in some situations, you will see them identified as Canaanites. And then in some situations, you will see them identified as Shem. And so this is an interesting dynamic that adds to this obscurity situation, but the obscurity is definitely intentional. It may not be intentional for all individuals who fall under this category of Amori or Amorite, but the obscurity is definitely intentional. It's very pervasive. And so as you see also, the Amorites are separated from the Canaanites, but the Amorites should be subsumed under the Canaanites. And because they are not subsumed under the Canaanites in this scripture, it suggests that they belong to another ancestral group. And in this passage, you see a very specific concern related to ancestry and genealogy. It's a very important concern because many people are presenting themselves as being of this pure sort of race. They are presenting themselves as having this ancestral line that is completely straight and that does not veer to the left or right and does not include anyone outside of whatever people group they claim it includes. It's virtually impossible for most people to actually trace all of these ancestors. When you start counting those grandparents, it becomes astronomical. And so it's not prudent for people to even assert this, let alone believe that these ancestral lines are so clear cut. And what this does is it calls into question the assertion by many people that they know for certain that they are of Jacob, and they know for certain that there has been no mixing in terms of their ancestry. And so what you have here is in Ezra 9:1-2, they have taken of their daughters for themselves. So they're talking about the Amori, the Canaanites, all of these different groups. Basically, what is being said here is that the people identified as the Israelites were intermarrying with and mingling with all of these other groups in the land. And so ultimately, what you have in terms of the people group known as the Israelites, you have an amalgam. And so you have a mixed group of people. Now, many people will say, well, the only thing that matters is the father. And most people cannot prove these paternal lineage assertions. They can't even prove the maternal lineage assertions when you go so far back. But in terms of genetic makeup, a child is made up of both the mother and the father. And so you do not have these clear-cut lineages like many people would like to assert. And here it is indicated that this mixing and mingling is more important than some people in current times would like to believe. And so this mixing and mingling goes back quite a way, and it incorporates these various children known as the children of Jacob. And so therefore it would descend down with all of those people, because people are the sum total of these ancestors. And so this is indicated as a concern, and it's indicated as a concern with respect to all of these different people groups, including the Amorites or the Amori. And then it gets very specific because it indicates the princes and the rulers have been principal in this trespass. So they've been chief in this trespass. They have been the main individuals involved in this entire dynamic. And so not the commoners, but those who would be considered the royalty, the nobility, the elite. And so those are the individuals that caused this mixing and mingling. And you see here that there's an indication that not only do you have the mixing and mingling being brought about by the royalty and the nobility, you have this mixing and mingling by the very priests themselves. And so what this means is, when people are saying, where is Rome? Who are the Romans? Sometimes it simply requires just looking in the mirror. And so before we go any further, let's just recap what the concerns are in Ezra 9 and 10. You have a concern of a violation of consecration. You have a violation or concern related to intermarriage. You have a concern related to syncretic religious practices. You have a concern related to the process of treaty making. And if you're familiar with the process of anagrams, and we've looked at some of those in the past, you can see a number of anagram dynamics with respect to the name Amorite. You can see Amor. You can see Roma. You can see Mora. You can see a number of dynamics with respect to this name Amorite or Amori. What I want to call your attention to is a dynamic related to the Amori that is related to a number of other people groups. It's that calling card dynamic. And so it's their calling card. It's the byword that defines them. And so they are understood as people who dwell on summits, and they are mountaineers. They are highlanders. They are equivalent to the Maroons who would escape to the mountains. And so they are considered people who are elevated or on high or exalted. It's unclear, but it may be tied to this idea that they are seen as lofty and large. They may not be lofty and large. They may just simply be perched on a loft. And so it's not clear, but What is clear is that this particular group of people, along with the variety of other people understood as Romans, they are identified with mountains and perches and citadels and all sorts of things that are exalted on high. They are not associated with the lowlands. And you see this here where it says the Canaanites were the ones who dwelled in the lowlands. Now, again, they are often identified as Canaanites. However, you see this distinction yet again. One other thing I want to bring your attention to is the description of the Amorite. And you've seen this description over and over and over again with another people group, another identifier. They are described as, in terms of this name, the meaning of the name is bitter, rebellious, and babblers. This goes on to provide a little bit more information about the history of the Amorites, the geography of the Amorites, the geopolitical dynamics surrounding the Amorites, and then biblical references for this. You even see an indication that there was a land of the Amorites. But again, you don't see anything about the Amorites after a particular conquest. What happens with the Romans, these groups known as the Romans, over time is you see them sort of appear in history and then disappear. You see another name that's a Roman name, Roman affiliated name, pop up again with another group of people somewhere else, and then you see another disappearance. And so this adds to that obscurity and mystery surrounding those people identified as the Romans. And here you see another reference in Easton's Bible Dictionary for the Amorites, the Amori. They are specifically known as the Highlanders or the Hillmen. You have another group of people known as the Highlanders coming out of Scotland, and there is a relationship between those people and the people group known as the Amori or the Mari or the Mori. And here you see additional names for this particular group. And again, they are indicating that they are the sons of Canaan. However, this does not completely hang together because they seem to be situated outside of this Canaan identity in many instances, and they appear to be situated in the Shem identity or that Shem line. And so you see here other names for them are Amura, Amuri, and so you see that M-U-R dynamic. You also see an indication here that Babylon monuments indicate that Palestine is known as the land of the Amorites. And so the slopes of the mountains of Judea are also known as the Mount of the Amorites. There are also a number of dynamics that conflate the identity of the Romans and the identity of those known as Japheth. And you see here an indication that even one of the names for the king of the Amorites, the name was Og. There's also an indication that there was a major war between the Amorites and the children of Jacob, as indicated by Joshua leading this war. And then there was a defeat by the waters of Merom by Joshua. It's indicated, however, that during the days of Samuel, there was peace between the Romans and the Israelites. Now, there is a question about whether there is a historical retributive justice dynamic going on with respect to the Amorites and the people understood as Jacob. Is there an attempt to sort of get back or pay back for something that was understood as a wrong, and part of this obscurity serving to allow the throwing of rocks and the hiding of the hands? And here in this discussion, it indicates that the Amorites were warlike mountaineers, and it describes them as having fair skin and light hair and blue eyes. Now, when many people see fair skin, they may think of lighter skin, but that's not the actual definition of fair skin. And this is to just show you some of the depictions of the Amorites or people who are identified as Amorites in different cultures. And so you see those blue eyes, but you see manifestations of different phenotypes in terms of the shape of the nose, the shape of the lips, the shape of the face. But those eyes do definitely stand out, and you see different skin colors also. And here you see additional manifestations coming out of India and Turkey. And in case anyone wants to look at this a little bit more, you can see this list of topics associated with the Amorites and those understood as Jacob in Scripture. And so you have content related to the descendants of Canaan, understanding the Amorites in that way, understanding the Amorites as giants, understanding the territory of the Amorites, and then also looking at the specific relationship between the Amorites and Abraham or Abram. There's also additional information about the Romans/Amorites in this list, and you can see information about the conquest, the chiefs, the wickedness, the idolatry, the judgment, information about hornets related to them intermarrying with Jacob, special section there, and then the kings. And this is what ties the Romans to Japheth, or the Amorites to Japheth. Japheth's name is also rooted in this idea of being fair, which means beautiful. And so you see the Yapheh. And so that's a part of the etymology of Japheth when you look at some sources. And so again, fair with respect to these Amorites is not about their skin being light. It's about their skin or their complexion being beautiful. And this is just to revisit these depictions. And so you see the blue eyes, you see the variety in terms of skin color, and these are depictions that are supposed to be coming out of Egypt, Sumer, and Peru. And here you see additional information that fair means beautiful, beauty, comely. And again, these are the depictions coming out of India and Turkey. And this continues on, so you can see that connection between this particular descriptor and the name that is associated with Japheth. And remember, according to many narratives, Japheth's home is Europe. If you are familiar with Scripture, you will notice that there is a significant pattern of this sort of tit for tat dynamic. And so there is the fighting and the taking and then the retaking and more fighting. And this goes on and on and on. It's amazing that people accomplished anything with all of this going on constantly. Anyway, with respect to retributive dynamics, you have this scripture here in Amos 2:10 indicating that the children of Jacob occupied the land of the Amorite. And so here you see food for this retributive justice dynamic right here. And so again, this potential for a tit for tat with respect to these hidden, cloaked Romans. Now, mind you, while all of this is going on, it's not completely clear who is Roman and who is Jacob, because they have intermarried. And so there is no clear-cut line of demarcation anymore with respect to who is Jacob, who is Roman, and who the land actually belongs to. And so you have a number of issues going on there. But here's another entry related to the Amorites, and this is in 2 Chronicles. You have an additional scripture here, and this is Exodus 23:24, indicating that the children of Jacob were not to bow down to the gods of the Amorites, and that they were supposed to overthrow them and break down their images. Again, this gives rise to yet another opportunity for this retributive dynamic. And here in Genesis 15, you have this indication that the Amorites would continue on because the iniquity of the Amorites had not yet been fulfilled. Now, because of some of the obscurity dynamics, many people believe that either the ancient Romans didn't exist or that they no longer exist. But not only do they exist, but they are, again, quite prolific. And so one of the indicators that you are looking at Romans is that you will see words that have Roman or Rome or Roma in them when you do these sorts of anagram dynamics. And so you may see Mara, you may see things like Mura, you may see things like Amor or Mora. So you may see all of these variations that if you turn them around in different ways, you will see the word Rome, or you will see the word Roma, or you will see Romani. You will see all sorts of things related to those letters. If you recall, we were recently talking about one group and the meaning of the name being associated with change. And so this is what you see with the Romans. There is significant change, whether it's changing place names, changing people around. There is just constant change and exchange going on. And you see this with place names. And so instead of there being one Mount Hermon, there are multiple Mount Hermons, and so you may never figure out which one is the Mount Hermon. So this dynamic is as prolific as the Romans. And so you even see this with the naming of places. And so you had Armorica over in Europe, and now you have America in America. And so you see these double place names. Again, you see these population exchanges going on. And all of this is to create more obscurity and more confusion. The question is why? And so in addition to the California Mount Hermon, you have Louisiana Mount Hermon. And then if you travel north and east, you have a Mount Hermon in Virginia. And as we wrap this up, this is a reading suggestion that you might want to check out, and it's on the retribution principle in the Amorite view of history. Hopefully this discussion has served to expand your perspective related to this identity group known as the Romans. And so you can see that, again, this people group is vast. The complex history that they have is a very long one, and it's a very convoluted, complex history, and specifically a very complex, convoluted history with respect to those understood as Jacob. Now, this is one of those dynamics of wheat and tares, because these individuals have been growing up together. And again, the numbers are vast in terms of these different people groups understood as the Romans. And so you have all of this intermingling going on. And at this point, just looking at the surface of things, it's not easy to disentangle these people groups. People don't have any choice in the ancestors that they have. And because there are so many ancestors, and ancestors were not necessarily picking their partners, their marriage partners, based upon belonging to a particular people group, there has been significant mixing and matching going on. Some of it voluntary, and then some of it not so voluntary. And one of those issues, or there are certain questions that are floating around about the whole dynamic with Dinah, the person identified as Jacob's daughter, and how she has been identified with the female enslaved identity. So there are a number of dynamics going on that can be addressed. However, the thing to keep in mind is that there has been significant mixing and matching, and so the disentangling is not as easy as it might seem. Remember, knowledge is power. Take care, see you soon.